The path is your own journey.
Right.
The initiate has to go on its own journey. And you can't take nothing with you. And you at the goddamn crossroads. And the crossroads is, are you ready to go to the next level?
Yeah.
Because guess what? I can't take you to the next level. Right? You got to make that decision.
Guilt. The fact of having committed a specified or implied offense or crime. Guilt is an informal term. As a verb, it means make someone feel guilty, especially in order to induce them to do something.
Alright, so let's talk about guilt. Let's talk about where guilt is derived from, the benefits of guilt, and you know, the pitfalls, and how to, you know, release and get past guilt. So when we think about guilt, you naturally kind of think about the judicial system. You think about a judge, a prosecutor, lawyers, witnesses, jury, things like that, right? Because let me just say this first and foremost, guilt is always based on our perception of ourselves, our lack of awareness, and sometimes just guilt could be the only comfortable place to live in, and we so familiar with it that we love to just live in it. And we all met people that they just can't let certain things go, whether they was in the wrong or whether it was somebody else. And especially when you feel you have wronged somebody else or you made a mistake, that's the type of guilt that stick around a little bit longer, right? So let's think of guilt as when we look at the judicial system. So when you go to court, right? And here's a fun fact about the court system. It's based on pirate ships, right? You know, those who run the seas have control over the seas. They have control over everything, you know, because they bargaining, they buying, they selling, they buying, they selling. Then the trucks get it. Then the trucks transport it wherever it's going. So, and it's still a lot of pirates still at sea. They still have to work with pirates, and this government still do business with pirates. Don't get it fucked up. So when we talking about pirates, we talking about pirate ship, and we talk about the judicial system in the courtroom, right? The courtroom is modeled after a pirate ship. So the procedure you go through to walk up and to see the judge and things like that, you're doing a ritual that a pirate would do when it's up for trial to see if it's going to have to walk the plank or not. So back on the pirate ship, if you was found guilty, they throwing you off to the water, right? So that's just a fun fact. And here go another one. So the pirates used to make the laws, you know what I'm saying, the laws of the seas. So certain shit, they speak in double speech. So certain things, most things when we talk about law, is always double speech. It's always hereas, whereas. You got to be careful. You got to know what those words are referencing. It might be referencing something before and not after it, and you could get caught up. Follow me. So it's a lot of double speech within the courtroom, just by the nature of how the laws are written. You know what I mean? That's why when you go to get arrested, you have a cell mate, like a pirate ship. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so let's dive into our own psyche, right? And let's dive into the many characters that the ego could play. So let's think about a courtroom. You think about the jury. You got the judge. You got the prosecutor, and you got the defendant. You got witnesses too. So our psyche play a trick on us. Our ego play a trick on us. So we play all of these parts. So we'd be sitting somewhere deep in thought, kind of daydreaming or whatever the case may be. And we are the ones that's putting ourselves on trial. We are the judge, which would be like the super ego, the one that judges all the rest of the egos that we create. Then we would let's look at the defendant. We pose ourselves as defendants too in our own mind. And then we pose ourselves as the prosecutors that's enforcing the laws, enforcing that we did something wrong, enforcing the guilt. And then you have the jury. I think that we want to get ourselves and get our psyche to a place that we could act as a fair jury for ourselves. so that we're actually working towards self-development so that we can advance moving forward and not just condemn. You feel what I'm saying? So that's just a quick layout to how the ego plays all these sides. So you'll find yourself condemning yourself like the prosecutor would do the defendant. Then you'll find yourself acting as the defendant and trying to jump in the bag of and justifications of why you did what you did or why things are the way they are, whatever the case may be, to defend yourself. And then you act as the judge, which what I would call a super ego, that's judging all the other egos, because nobody could judge anybody. But like I said, we play this game on ourselves and with ourselves. So we play all of these parts. And the thing about the jury is this: when the state pick a jury, usually they try to pick a jury that's not biased. Though we have a lot of biased juries in this country, we in America, so people rarely get a fair trial. You truly guilty until proven innocent, even though they say it's the other way around. So because the law like that, we do that to ourselves. We'll hold ourselves guilty before we even really step into a situation and shit like that. We already condemning ourselves. But like I was saying, we want to get our psyche and our mind and our subconscious mind to a place where we could act as a fair jury. Now, when they pick a jury, they try to pick unbiased. So if somebody got shot or robbed, then they don't want to pick people that got shot and robbed because they might have a bias towards the defendant and want to place them in jail just all for their prior traumatic experiences. So let's just, for imaginative purposes, let's just think of the jury as a fair jury, right? We want to get our psyche right there, so we're able to see where we went wrong at and be able to carry on without the guilt of the choices that we have made in the past and shit like that. And one of the toughest things about releasing guilt is when it's tied to others, when it's close to home, when it's dealing with your family members, when it's dealing with your friends, your spouse, and things like that. And just dealing with yourself. A lot of times we could be self-deceptive unintentionally and carry guilt around for not being able to be as adequate as we would like to be. Because that's one thing about the stipulations that are placed upon us in this society, in this world, is like, you need to be perfect. You need to get it right. If you mess up, it's just a lot of pressure. You know what I mean? It's a lot of pressure to do things the right way, so-called right way. It's a lot of pressure to feel a certain way, about yourself too. So a lot of times we carry guilt just by not having a feeling that we feel like most people have, not sharing the same version of reality with a lot of other people, having different beliefs, having beliefs that might challenge the society or the structure that you live in, the environment, the family, the traditions that you are up against, dealing with your, like I said, your family, your friends, and just life at large. Having those differences could lead you to feeling guilty, you know what I mean? And a lot of times it should just be hard to unpack. You might be over something, you might have seen your errors in your ways, you might sincerely be apologetic about it. And that don't mean that the other party is going to be accepting of your apology and things like that. So a lot of guilt get carried around just because we know that others still hold us in a bad light. Others still feel like this about us. Others still have memories of a certain history of us in a certain way. That's some of the hardest guilt to get over. But like I said, you want to discern yourself appropriately, and you're not going to be able to do that without being unbiased to whatever the situation is. I think I think that one of the biggest parts of life is grieving. And guilt is a big part of grieving. You know, it's one of the last stages of grieving, like guilt and shame. It's hard to go on into the new. It's hard to forge a path forward when you look back. Sometimes you might feel like you don't deserve a good life. You might feel like you don't deserve a peace of mind, a peaceful environment because where you came from. Another thing, and it's one of the hardest things for me, just leaving other people behind to fend for themselves, like not being able to bridge certain gaps, not being able to push people in the direction of awareness, not being able to push them in the direction of their best self because they on the path, on the timeline they on, but the love you have for them a lot of times make you hold on a little bit longer. And you know, a lot of things end with misunderstandings too. So when things are end without a fair sit down, a eye to eye, or whatever you want to call it, when it happen like that, a lot of times it could leave like just a lot of unhealed shit, a lot of unopened, unpacked things. You feel me? Because we all on different journeys. So when it comes to people, when it comes to places, when it comes to things, sometimes we just got to keep it moving. And, you know, if you one of the ones that's stepping up in your respective field of whatever you do or whoever you are, you could be a reference point for those people that you leave behind. Like, it'd be hard, though. Like, it really do. I'm from the hood, and I be dealing with survivor's remorse a little bit, you know. Because I've seen things, I've experienced things that some of my friends that's dead and gone I never see and never know existed. And then a lot of my friends or peers or whatever you want to call it is still dealing with, you know, dire circumstances in their life. So it's hard for them to tap into their creativity. It's hard for them to focus on a mission. It's hard for them to feel like they got the time to get an understanding of who they are. They just dealing with their circumstances. They trying to survive or whatever the case may be, and they doing whatever they think they have to do or see fit to do for the circumstance at hand. But you know, some of us, we look a little further and we see a way we can make ourselves free and a path that we could pave for ourselves. And we understand that it's not going to be easy, and we do that. And we have to understand this too. Like, we don't owe nobody shit. We don't owe nobody anything. We don't. Like I said, that's one of the hardest things to deal with. Like, you've been in the mud with people, you've been in situations with them, and you got a higher calling on your name. You got a higher calling on your energy. Your life is pushing you to let shit go. Let people go. Try something new. Travel, move around, have new experiences. And a lot of those people, places, things, activities, habits is not going to be cohesive to you doing that. So, you know, the stage in between letting go and moving into the new, it's written with a lot of guilt. I just want to go back to the point that we have to be able to sit back and be a fair jury so that we don't get caught up in these other concepts of ourselves and be playing the judge and the defendant and the prosecutor and all of that shit, and just really condemning ourselves, really placing judgment on ourselves, and ultimately placing judgment on other people too. You feel me? That's why I don't never, judge a person for what they do, even a murderer. Like, you just never know why. You never know what made that person. You never know what pushed people to be who they are. You know what I mean? So I always try to look at people with an objective view. And even if it's something I wouldn't do, I'm not going to condemn it. Because if I condemn it in another, I got to condemn it in myself. And I think that's a big part of letting go of guilt. Once you see how guilt affect you, you start to not want to place guilt on other people. You start not wanting to be so quick to judge another person, and you start to, learn to be a lot more empathetic and put yourself in other people's shoes. You feel me? But like I was saying, guilt could be a huge block when you stepping through that threshold to go to whatever the next level of your life is. And I'm just here to say that it's normal. It's a part of life. And like I said, it's a big part of transformation, because when we going through transformation and we talk of transformation, we talking about life, we talking about death, and we talking about rebirth. So, when you dying from one existence of yourself that it's going to be hard to let certain things go. And it's going to be hard to accept some of the new. Because like I said, like a lot of times we feel like we don't deserve certain things. So a lot of people in this world at times feel like they don't deserve to be alive. Like, guilt is one of the biggest things that lead to suicide too. And I know a lot of people don't talk about suicide and suicidal thoughts, and I ain't expect to even speak on it, but since I'm speaking on it, it's something that's very real. It's something that a lot of people deal with. It's something that a lot of people try their best to avoid the reality of it. And I pretty much think like just a lot of people in the country, a lot of people around the world, globally, that's dealing with, questioning their existence and wondering if it's of value or if it has any worth or meaning. And depending on what stage you at, you could get caught up. Some people don't make it. And like I said, a lot of that is derived from guilt. A lot of people got parents that make them feel guilty just for existing. Make them feel guilty for their whole life or their downfall of their career and relationships and shit like that. Like a lot of us have different traumas. But I noticed, like I said, that's what I'm talking about, the guilt, because guilt live within all of these traumas. Guilt live within, it's like the heart of perfectionism. And, since I've been speaking or whatever, I got over perfectionism to a certain point, and I realized the more I allowed guilt to fall away, the more I shed guilt, the more I was able to embrace my expression, the more I was able to just speak clearly and things like that, and not feel that I owe it to anybody to speak in any type of way. Guilt play a big part in your self-expression, your creativity, your boundaries, and definitely your potential, ultimately. I feel like we here to try to maximize our potential, and it's always going to be something we got to share, and it's always going to be something that we got to accept to move forward and advance. And some of those things are going to be new good things that we have to accept. Sometimes it's going to be things that it's hard to accept about ourselves. Because that's the thing. We don't want to look at ourselves as is. We want to start fixing shit first. We want to just say, oh, this is bad. We want to condemn it. And then we want to just try to go into some self-help, 30-day program shit that to make it all right. When in reality, we really ignoring it. When in reality, we really condemning it and we not facing it. And like I always say, this is a fucking journey. And when I say it's a journey, I mean like it's a day-to-day process. Some days you might be dealing with guilt or shame more than others. Sometimes I feel like my decisions and things that I did and people I got away from is justified, and other times I feel a little bit more conflicted about it. But I feel like you just got to judge it by your fruit. You got to judge it by who you've become, and you have to judge it by what it took you to get to who you are. Was it the path of your intuition, or was it the path of you just trying to force some shit? You know what I mean? And that's up to us to come to the conclusion about. However we see it is how we gonna move forward. Yeah. So A lot of the things you might want, a lot of the things you might think that you deserve, literally, by you condemning yourself, you blocking yourself from those things. By condemning yourself and constantly persecuting yourself and finding yourself guilty and harboring that shit, you know. And like I said, people gonna help you do it. Like, people want you to feel guilty. Understand that shit. People want you to remember that time. They want you to feel guilty. They want you to feel like you own something. They want you to have survivor's remorse. And on this path right here, on this journey right here, this is one of them paths you got to keep it moving. Hope they follow the footsteps or something. And it's a journey to walk away from a lot of shit. It really is. And I don't think nobody walk away without a little guilt, little shame, little regret. And, you know, it's a part of the process. It's a part of life. It's a part of grieving. It's a part of transformation. And there's no way around it.